All right. So there's a couple of really cool things that I found after analyzing this. The first of which I know that there's a lot of colors, but the first thing I want to mention is the reason why they're different colors is that if you notice, there are never two of the same pitch class in a row, except for here when you have that 016. The recurring 016, every time it shows up, it's always in a pair like this. It shows up 4 different times, and if you count the repeat, it's 8. But I just thought that that was pretty interesting. Um, but there's no pattern. It's not always after a orange note. It's not always, followed by an O2. It's not the same, which I think is really interesting. Something else I wanted to mention was the orange, which is I marked the orange as every single pitch class that had 4 different notes. Now, something that I thought was really cool is that all of them, with the exception of this, occur twice. So, but the order that they happen is pretty interesting. So you have the 0247, the 0134, and the 0156. But when you get to the second repeat, they happen again. Not only are they one after the other immediately, but they also happen in reverse order as they occur in the first half. So in the second half, they go 0156, 0134, 0247. So that's something that I thought was pretty interesting. Also, this one right here is the only time that a 4 note pitch class occurs but it doesn't have a pair. That's why I only shaded it halfway. It only occurs once and it recurs through the repeat, but that's the only one. It's the only one that's like it. There was just a couple more things I wanted to mention. One of them is the golden section, which is placed about right here if you take the repeats. And with them both being taken, it would make a little bit of sense because you're taking the last repeat and then you're, making your way on the home stretch. Now, the last thing I wanted to mention was all of these. So I didn't really know how to annotate them because it was just an A4. So what I wrote was a 9 because that's the pitch. Um, Something that I thought was really interesting about this is because we mentioned in class about completing the aggregate. However, so I wouldn't really consider this to be something that fits that definition. However, I thought it would be important to note that these are just an A4, right? Each time it shows up, it's an A4 in both voices. Now, um, this is the only time in the entire piece that there is ever an A being played. There is every other note appears in some form or another in this piece except for the A, which I thought would be a really cool thing to mention. And that's why I named it number 9, because it's not an interval necessarily, but that's the note that it is. And since it would be so important with completing the aggregate, I thought it would be nice to put that in there just to define it. So there was actually a bunch of other things that I noticed. For example, I noticed that there were only 3 different measures that had quarter notes in them. Everything else was always an eighth note and nothing overlapped. And there was chords and there was grace notes, but these are the only times that 2 notes played separately should be heard together, which I thought was pretty interesting. 2 of the times were tritones, and one of them was a 04 major third. And there's a bunch of other things that I found, but I think it was supposed to be 3 minutes. I don't know where I am on time. But that's about what I thought about this piece. I thought it was super interesting, actually, and I think that all of these things tie it together really well. Um, I think it all makes sense in a convoluted way, and I think that it's very sequential and methodical in the way that he took all of these chords and uh, made them work together the way they did. Um, but yeah,